I will support or obey
and defend the Constitution of the United States
and defend the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of Utah,
and the Constitution of the State of Utah,
and that I will discharge the duties of my office with fidelity.
and I will discharge the duties of my office with fidelity.
Yay. Turn, I thought I turned. And
we're mostly applauding because we need you. We need more people. I'm okay if you take a moment. You want to introduce yourself to us? Most of us haven't met you.
Sure. Chris Kahn, I'm a resident of the city for 13 years. I've lived in the SSD development the entire time. I'm one of probably your only loyal YouTube fans. I've watched every single meeting that's available, and so I feel I'm very familiar of all the issues and the things the Planning Commission are dealing with currently, as well as what they've done over the last several years.
Right. Well, welcome. And we have seen you on social media, and you've done a good job in supporting the city, so thank you for that.
Thank you.
All right. This is a public meeting. Sorry, Nora. What did you need?
before we get started on the agenda, we would like to introduce our two new planners.
Oh, let's do that.
So if both of you could come up, that would be great. So this is Ryan Harris and Janet Albers. Yes. And then would you guys just say something about yourselves?
Yeah, my name is Ryan Harris, and my wife and we have 5 kids. We've lived in Saratoga Springs for 7 years. And before this, I worked at Provo City for 10 years, and for those years I did code enforcement, and I did help the planners there too. And I graduated from the U in urban planning back in 2009. I'm excited to be here.
So I'm Jenna. I'm originally from upstate New York, and I came out here in 2010 for school. I did my undergrad at BYU and got my master's this past spring at the U in urban planning, and I've worked for mainly private sector, and I'm excited to work for the city, and nice to work with you guys.
Great. Welcome to both of you. All right, let's get started with our meeting. This is a public meeting, and we've set aside some time for those items that are not on the agenda. Welcome you to come forward and state your name and address for the record, and limit your comments to about 3 minutes.
Or items that are on the agenda and don't have a public hearing schedule.
That would also be acceptable.
My name's Aaron Evans. I live at 1126 West Fairfield Road. I want to comment on Lexington Green. My concerns are, 1, road width on the Fairfield Road when it comes to a 29-foot right-of-way with public housing, individual single housing facing that road. I run farm equipment up and down that road. It's not wide enough. As I commented in our last meeting, I brought a piece of equipment, 15-foot piece of equipment, from down by the high school up 400 North up the Fairfield Road. I passed 4 cars, 2 of them on Fairfield Road, 2 of them on Fairfield Road, or 2 of them on 4th North and 2 of them on Fairfield. Never had a problem on 4th North. On Fairfield Road, the 2 cars I passed there, both the vehicle and my equipment myself had to pull off into the bar pit. 29 feet is just not enough. If you look at a 29-foot right-of-way, go down on Maria Way. I think most of you could be familiar with that, just on the south side of the elementary, going east and west towards the high school. There are parking on both sides of the road. If there's parking on both sides of the road, 1 car gets through. If there's 1 car on the road parked, 2 cars try to pass, you got to be very cautious or you'll have an accident. The other concern is the traffic situation. When you're talking, 750 to 1,000 cars for Lexington Green, you're talking another 400 homes west of on Fairfield Road for Edge Homes. That brings in 2,000 to 3,000 cars, maybe more. Yes, they are putting the road between Point Express and 73. That will not take all the cars. I understand from Mr. Minor there's been a traffic survey done. Well, somebody must have done it behind the desk because they sure didn't go out and look at it in real time. During peak travel times, coming east along Point Express, the traffic in the mornings is backed up almost out to Ridley's. At night, coming across here tonight, 68 or Redwood Road was backed clear back up to here, going south. Traffic is horrendous. And you're going to put some more homes in there, which is fine. I agree that you're here to protect me as a landowner and the developer that wants to come in and put stuff in. But consideration needs to be taken in how you're going to handle this traffic. Putting traffic out onto Point Express from Lexington Green, even though you're widening the road to a 5-lane road, there's no place for that traffic to go. So some of them are going to come out on the Fairfield Road. One of these days, they might put Mountain View Corridor through. And right now, during peak travel times, vehicles trying to get on 800 West, the school's there with all the traffic, just doesn't happen. If you look at the traffic light on 400 North, that backs up past the school road, and it takes 2 or 3 signal changes to get the traffic through. Just a tremendous problem. So that needs to be a real consideration. And I'm afraid someone's going to get killed with some of this stuff because, like today, I moved a piece of equipment along 800 West. I didn't move very fast. Really, you know, all our fine neighbors and everything else come along, and it's amazing how many will give you the finger because you don't get out of their way. Not my place to get out of their way. I'm in the travel lane. I have a right to be in that travel lane, and I will be in that travel lane. My conversation with the mayor and Mr. Mark Christensen the other day was that when I bring equipment down Fairfield Road, if there's cars and stuff parked there, he says, the mayor says, just pinstripe them with your equipment. Yeah, that'd be great if I could do that, but then I'm at fault, and that isn't going to happen. But I'll promise you one thing, as I told the mayor, one of my first phone calls will be to him, and the next one will be the police, and I definitely will block the road until I can. So these are some real concerns. The mayor also tells me that during the final planning that you will have the irrigation ditches taken care of. There's a concrete ditch that runs down Fairfield Road, which provides service to agriculture on the north side and on the south side. And I run water between the High Line or the Welby-Jacob Canal to the Utah Lake Canal. That ditch cannot be closed. The other thing is I irrigate the field to the west of Lexington Green. That field on Lexington Green is always where that wastewater has gone. That has to be taken care of. I do not feel that's my responsibility because it's always been there. It's been tradition ever since the canals have been in place. We used to own, my father and his brothers owned all that ground, and it was used as a catch for wastewater. Right now, Alan Rasmussen, which is farming Lexington Green ground, uses that water to water his ground. So it needs to be taken care of. So those are the comments that I have. Mr. Minor recommended I submit a paper, which I will. I haven't done it yet. Also, Mark Christensen suggested I submit a written paper, and I will get that done and submit it. But I think the Planning Commission needs to be aware of these facts prior to their decision. You're here to protect me, and you're here to protect Mr. Christensen. I don't think Mr. Christensen has the city in mind when he's trying to do the things he's doing. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Evans. Just before we Were there any other public comments? Okay, so there aren't any. We're going to close public comment at this time. Mr. Evans, I did meet with the mayor before this meeting, and we did discuss what you had discussed with him and Mr. Christensen, and he also, you already mentioned it, that you're going to submit a paper in writing that, so that we can enter that into public record. Okay, okay. Does anybody else from the city want to address any of these concerns that he's brought before us? Well, we have 4, so we'd like someone to respond to his comments.
I wasn't sure whether you wanted to wanted me to address them at this time or at the time that the item is being considered. Happy to do it however you want.
We have notes for what they are. We'll consider it when we go to item number 5. Okay, that sounds good. All right. Guess what? Item number 5. I am going to turn the time over in a minute, but this is a continued item. It's a preliminary plat for Lexington Green, located at the northwest corner of Foothill Boulevard and Pony Express Parkway. LeVar Christensen is the applicant, and this is an item that is continued from April 12th, 2018. We will turn the time over to our director, Dave Stroud, for...
I'll be covering that on Dave's behalf. He's out of town.
Thank you.
Okay. So, as you mentioned, you did see this previously. It's zoned MF 18 and R36, and they are allowed 252 apartments, and they are proposing 100 single-family lots and then reserving parcel A for the apartments in the future.
Is your mic on? We're having a little trouble hearing you. Maybe we'll turn you up.
Is that better?
Better. Yep, thank you.
Okay. Yeah, maybe. So they are proposing 100 single-family lots and of different sizes, several parcels of open space, and then parcel A will be reserved for the 252 apartments in a future development application. And so here's a summary of what you're seeing in their concept plan. So 80 lots that are about 4,000 square feet, 8 lots that are 6,000 square feet or larger, and then 12 lots that are 6,500 square feet or larger. And then, as I mentioned, a total of 352 units, so less than what their agreement allows them to do. And then what you'll be seeing today does not involve the apartment, so it's just, this is the preliminary plat right here, and this was the concept plan. And then what you're seeing in your packet is an amenities table showing how they're complying with the amenities requirement.
Sorry.
And, oh, okay. And then you're also seeing landscape plans in your packet for the various open space pieces in there and showing where those amenities will be located throughout the development. And then staff is recommending that you recommend a positive recommendation to City Council with the conditions in the staff report.
Thank you. And it looks like our applicant or our representative of our applicant is here. Would you like to introduce your name?
Yes, thank you.
And address for the record.
I appreciate it. Paxton Guyman, I'm the attorney for the applicant. Mr. Christensen is away on business. He can't be here tonight. So I am here to ask you to make an honest man out of me. I promised him that he didn't need to be here, that we agreed to give you the extra time you needed to look at the plans, and that things should go just fine in his absence. The plan you see is the result of a lot of input and feedback from city. We've been able to reach a lot of good compromises on the density and get rid of attached products. So it's all single family, which is really remarkable given, you know, sort of the acreage and the density rights, and still coming in a little under the density works for everyone. So we're hopeful that you will forward this to the City Council with a positive recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Guyman. So at this time, we already covered, already had an open meeting for this, and I would like to address the comments that were brought forward to us. So would you like to address those?
Number one was the road width, dealing with the right-of-way and the farm equipment that needs to be able to pass on that road.
Would it be appropriate to give the applicant an opportunity to address the issue?
That's preferable. Sure.
Okay, I'll do the best I can, but if I miss anything, please chime in. So the question is the road width, and the road is going to be expanded as part of this project. It's going to be widened. We've talked in the past that if there are concerns about having vehicles park on the edge of this road, if it does create problems with traffic or width of equipment, we can have no parking posted there. We can limit the parking. This is commonly done when you have new development. Many of the concerns relate to sort of the new reality of your community, which is you've got a growing community, and people like this place, and they're moving here, and you're going to see more traffic. That's sort of the reality of the transition that this community is experiencing from urban to residential use, I should say from agricultural to urban residential use. And, you know, traffic studies are the purview of people who are qualified and trained. You can't just stand up and say it's too much traffic. You have to have an evidentiary, factual-based argument. And, you know, we've had the traffic studies done. The appropriate traffic mitigation concerns will be addressed. And if somebody has a concern about traffic, it's not enough just to stand up and say, I think it's too busy. You have to have somebody who's qualified and trained to do an analysis that you can rely upon. And that to date, at this point in time, the only traffic studies that have been done have shown that this project is suitable, that the right road expansion will take place to handle the traffic flow. All right.
There are several conditions related to traffic within the project, and then also Fairfield, number 6 is related to Fairfield Road.
Yeah, I mean, what you've shown is that there are conditions already decided upon to address these very issues. This is not something new. That's probably a safe comment.
So the only comment I would make is there's nothing in the code that says you as a planning commission can make a condition and direct administrative staff to mark this road as no parking. If there were something in the code that said that, we certainly could do that. What I recommended last time is that you make the suggestion to the city council that they direct staff to mark that road as no parking. That would be appropriate for you to do. Not condition your approval on Fairfield Road being marked as no parking. And like I agree with all the comments that have been made. This is an improvement to the existing condition of Fairfield Road. It's being expanded. There's adequate parking for each of these homes. There are 2-car garages that have plenty of accommodation for 2 cars in the driveway. Yes, there is going to be the occasional person parking on the street. That's something that can be looked at the time it becomes a problem. Other things that we've discussed as staff as possibly an amendment to the transportation master plan. That's another thing. This road is marked as a local road in the transportation master plan. The amendment we could consider as staff is to accommodate for existing agricultural uses and amending the transportation master plan. That would not apply to this project. It could apply to Evans Lane, where that's required to be expanded to accommodate these agricultural uses. But for this existing state that we're in, there's not anything we can do as far as making this road, or making the applicant expand this road. The city can choose to do that, but not that. We can't force the applicant to do that.
So I have a question then, because
I was going to bring that up.
yeah,
Go ahead.
there is a condition. I was actually going to thank
number
staff
6
for having put that condition in there, but there is a condition in the staff report that
Number
says
6,
staff
Kevin.
to mark Fairfield Road as no parking. So are you suggesting that that's not appropriate then?
That's not a condition you can impose because it's not a requirement in the code. Yeah, any condition that you place on approval of this has to be code-based.
Okay.
And there is no code requirement for that.
So that should be rewritten to say what you said about making a recommendation to the city to direct staff.
Make a suggestion to the council because they supervise staff and direct the city manager, and they can provide that direction to the city manager, who can then pass that on to city staff to mark that as no parking.
There's number 7 as well. Okay, good.
There's just one more.
Just a second. So, we're going to turn this over to the Planning Commission for comment.
So there was one other item or question from from Mr. Evans, and that was concerning the irrigation ditches. And
Sandra, would you turn on your mic and tell us what you're saying?
There's a condition in the engineering conditions that covers that, and I don't have it right there, but there's going to have to be a study done.
I have it in front of me if you'd like me to read that condition.
Please.
The developer shall provide an irrigation master plan of gravity conveyances before and after development on a dedicated sheet. The irrigation master plan shall include the following text, quote, "The developer agrees and certifies that the developer, number 1, understands how the existing gravity irrigation system functions on, through, or in the vicinity of the project. Number 2, understands how the development of the project will affect the system's stakeholders. Number 3, takes full responsibility for changes to the system. Number 4, understands that the city assumes no responsibility or liability for changes made to the system. And number 5, agrees to release, indemnify, hold harmless, and defend the city against any and all claims, actions, or lawsuits with respect to developers' development activity or alteration of the system." That certification would be signed and dated by the developer.
Okay, so that one's resolved as well.
And so, just by the way, this is not a unique requirement. This is on our subdivision checklist. And so, anytime we have a development where there's potential or history of irrigation ditches and so forth, that certification is required.
Thank you, Gordon. Any other comments from the Planning Commission on this?
I do have one question if I can.
Go ahead.
Does that condition address the concern of the runoff, secondary runoff, when his fields are irrigated and that
It does.
excessive runoff comes into the fields where Lexington Farm is?
It does. You're speaking of tailwater, commonly
Yep.
called tailwater. It would address that as well.
Thank you.
Commissioner Steele.
I want to thank our applicant for coming back and allowing us more time. I did find a couple of issues, and if you have not been informed, sheet C200 has been replaced with the current sheet. And then we've cleared up some discrepancies in acreage. And so thank you very much. I think now we can send it forward more with a clean application.
Thank you.
I don't think I'm saying anything that the Planning Commission hasn't already discussed or last time, specifically referring to the City Council considering directing the staff on the no parking. I'm always sensitive when I see houses facing a road, particularly because I live on a road that's not being used as it was designed to be used, and it's a very busy road that has a lot of houses facing it. And I think should the City Council, it just alleviates a lot of potential heartburn that I have in that the houses facing the road, if that were no parking. But, you know, there's trade-offs with everything, and I think the creativity that you and the city showed with reducing some of the densities or the attached houses and how you laid it out, I think is commendable and should be an example for other developers.
Thank you.
Any other comments?
Just okay, so, this one's just a typo. Under condition 7A, the separate left and right exits. Clarify that. And then I had a question about a comment on...
Excuse me, so that would have been my condition. So you're talking about item 4A?
7.
I'm sorry.
No,
I'm
condition
talking about
7A.
in the staff report, not the engineering report.
It's on the screen.
Yeah.
7A.
It's just a typo.
Just rather than...
It should be exits, yeah.
Exits.
Very good.
And then in 1906, there's a comment there, I think, from the planning staff. Landscape table calculation does not match staff calculation. I think that was fixed last time, right? So that's just an oversight? Or that comment was just left in there?
I think that's been fixed.
Okay. Okay, that's it for me.
I'm just going to echo some of the comments that have been made earlier and thank the applicant for letting us review this prior to tonight's meeting. The only other thing I had was I was curious as to, Mr. Christensen had a statue that he showed us a picture of. Is that still going to be incorporated into the?
It is.
Okay.
It's a beautiful bronze statue, which he was trying to get more points for, if you might recall, on the amenity credits. But even though he'll only get 1 point, that statue will still be used.
Okay, thanks. That's all I had.
Not yet. Just a second. I just want to thank you for your patience, and I want to thank you for waiting the additional time so that we could review this and actually have the adequate time to look at it. It seems to me like there's a good feeling this might go forward, and you might be truthful after all to your client.
After all, thank you.
I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Chair, I move to forward a positive recommendation to the City Council for the Lexington Green preliminary plat, subject to the following findings and conditions, with the exception of striking condition number 6 and adding that as a strong suggestion for the City Council to consider directing staff to mark Fairfield Road no parking.
We have a motion from Brian Chapman. Do we have a second?
I second.
We have a second from Sandra Steele. Is there a question on the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Guyman.
Appreciate it.
Moving right along, we're going to move on to item number 6. This is a public hearing, a site plan for South Valley Equine Center located at 112 West, 400 North. Naomi Keller is the applicant, and we'll turn the time over to Nora Shepard for our presentation.
Okay, Sarah, I guess I can do it. Okay. Just to begin with, I wanted to make clear that this was originally put on the agenda with alternatives for motions, but at this point in time, there's still a ways away in terms of the engineering end of it. And so we are recommending that you open the public hearing, hear public comments, discuss, ask questions, give input, and then continue the item to a later date once they're closer on some of the engineering issues. So just FYI. So this is South Valley Equine Center site plan approval, and it's located at the corner of 400 North and Redwood. Right now, they actually own the parcel already. And right now, they have some facilities toward the back of the parcel. And they are proposing this new veterinary hospital specifically for large animals. It's in the agriculture zone, and this is a permitted use in the agricultural zone. The site is 8.91 acres. The clinic size is 13,285 square feet. Again, all the spaces are really oversized because of the size of the patients. There are 30 parking spaces proposed, including 2 accessible spaces near the front door. There's also outside exercise areas, horse trailer parking, and there's some future buildings, if you can see toward the back of the property, that will be barn-type buildings probably in the future. And when they want to come in to place those buildings, it will be an amendment to the site plan, so it'll come back before the Planning Commission. So right now, all you're approving is kind of the general layout and the veterinary clinic itself. So the total building size, as I mentioned, this is really the only issue for discussion we have from a planning perspective. The total building size is 13,385 square feet, and according to the code, they would be required to have 4 spaces per 1,000 square feet, which results in 54 spaces. But the building square footage is really oversized because, again, we're talking about horses, so everything, all the hallways, all the space, all the rooms, all the examining area, everything are really, really big, larger than they used to be, or they need to be. So we asked the applicant to let us know how much the square footage should be, just if you didn't have to accommodate horses. And let me see. And they came back with a number of 5,782 square feet. Also eliminates the garage where a business vehicle would be parked, and is a more realistic square footage number to use for calculating parking for this kind of use. So that would require 24 spaces. And they are proposing, as I mentioned, 30 spaces, including the 2 handicapped. And also, they are proposing quite a bit of parking that would be available for horses and trailers. The whole southwest corner would be an area that could be used. It's going to be, the material will be a material that's suitable for horses, so it's not gravel, it's more like a bark material. And right now, there are other areas on the site that could accommodate horse trailers as well, and additional parking if they need it. So the staff has reviewed this and feels that the 30 spaces proposed is probably more than enough for this particular use. So this is the architecture. Technically, because this is an expansion of an agricultural use in the agricultural zone, it does not have to meet the requirements of our site planning or design standards, but they do anyway. So they are coming in with a building that has a variety of materials, and the architects can talk further about those, but they do meet our architectural guidelines even though they don't have to. So we recommend that you open the public hearing, review the proposal, and provide comments or ask questions or things that we could get back to you with some additional information if needed, and then move to continue action to a future meeting due to the unresolved engineering concerns. They will have to make improvements to 400 North, and the extent of those improvements are being discussed, but they will have to do curb, gutter, sidewalk, and some additional asphalt in order to accommodate this use and meet the width that this road would be. And they will also make improvements to the frontage along Redwood Road to include an extension of the path and landscaping. And they will be between the parking and where their property ends, they will be berming that so that it shields the headlights. Which is a requirement that they may or may not really have to do, but they're going to do it anyway. So with that, I can turn it over to the applicant, Naomi Keller. You can come up here.
Thank you. Would the applicants come forward and introduce your name and address for the record, please?
Hi, thank you for having us. I'm Naomi Keller. I'm representing South Valley Large Animal Clinic, or the Intermountain Equine Reproduction Center. Do you need me to spell my name? It's on the sheet. Our business address is at 220 West, 400 North in Saratoga Springs. Our primary clinic address right now is at 1791 West, 114th South. So we have our hospital in South Jordan at the moment, and we're looking to relocate that and build it in Saratoga Springs.
Sounds exciting. And
Chris Polson with Benchmark Civil Engineering. Our office is located at 9138 South State Street in Sandy, Utah.
thank you. Chris and Naomi, did you want to add anything to the presentation today?
We've been working on, well, first of all, we appreciate the collaborative effort, and we hope that you're pleased with the plans. I think it'll be good for the community. But also, Nora's been great in giving us some feedback, and we've been in process. We've been working through a lot of the revisions that are suggested, so I'm hopeful we'll be able to come back shortly so that we can get final approval and start construction.
And the majority of the comments and engineering comments that Nora had mentioned have already been addressed. They just haven't been turned back into the city. There's a few elements, such as the improvements along 400 North and a few other elements that are still in the process of being coordinated. One thing I'd like to add is I'm really impressed with the applicants. I've worked with a lot of applicants doing a variety of projects, and as Nora mentioned, they're going above and beyond and helping and doing more than I guess are they being required to do, such as the building, the other elements of that nature. So we look favorably upon that as well.
Okay,
We like being here. We've been here for a while. We have, like I said, part of our business has been here for the last probably 10 or 12 years, and made sense for us to expand. And yeah.
Well, thank you. This is a public meeting, so we would open public comment that's right now at, for item number 6. And if anybody has anything to say, please come forward. Okay, given that there isn't, we will close public comment, and I'll turn it over to the Planning Commission. So it's very interesting property and kind of exciting. I have a lot of kids and they love horses. So maybe you could just give us a little overview for the public and for us of what you're going to use it for and how you're going to use it. And okay.
So current use right now, zoned for agricultural, and it's a reproductive center. So part of our business is just taking care of horses every day. Part of our business is ambulatory, so we go out to places, farms, that sort of stuff. Part of it is we do surgery. Another part of our business is breeding horses, and that's a seasonal business, January to May or June-ish. And we have 100 stalls. We have lots of mares, and we ship semen and inseminate the mares currently. Our hospital business and the rest of our business, as I mentioned, is 114th and Redwood in South Jordan. We're looking to consolidate all of that. So we'll have, like I said, emergencies if a horse has a colic or needs a surgery, if they have a lameness issue, if they just need their vaccines and, the normal, routine stuff, we'll do that there as well. So it's a more full service. And the nice thing about it is it's very centrally located for us. I mean, we have clients that come from Idaho. We make farm calls up to as far north as Idaho. We go down to southern Utah County. We head west, we head east. So the fact that we've trying to put the whole home in Saratoga Springs is actually great for all of our clients, and it'll help actually reach a lot more of our. We're excited, and we've been really pleased. Like I said, we like doing business here. One of our owners literally lives a mile west of our property. Another of our owner is right in Lehigh. We feel like we belong to the community, and that's also why we've gone, I guess, above and beyond or whatever, because we care about building the community. They're our clients, our customers, they're our neighbors. So that's kind of the way that we approach it, I guess.
Thank you very much. Before we turn this over to the Planning Commission, I had a question. If you suggested, Nora, that we continue this item, but in order to do that, we need to have some criteria to continue it.
And that would be, yeah, that would be based on, I had some language. Due to unresolved engineering concerns.
Okay.
And it's just a matter of timing. We gave the comments back to them, but they need a little bit more time to respond, and then we have to take a look at those. So it's just going to take a little bit longer.
Thank you. I'll turn the time over to the Planning Commission. Commissioner Steele.
Okay. One thing, I have no problems with the parking. I think this is one time when common sense has to prevail. And so...
A big one. That you have no problem with parking.
No, I have...
Thank you.
Just say thank you.
Yep.
Okay.
Appreciate that.
I am concerned about the easternmost entrance. That's the manual gate.
Yes.
Is that going to be continued to, are you going to continue to use that gate?
Not for everyday business. We just don't want to close it off at this point. So everyday business, there will be security. We need to be able to keep horses if they get out. We don't want them on the road, and we also don't want people coming in and taking horses when they're not supposed to. So we have a real entrance planned. There's an existing entrance on the west end for our current business, and then there will be another entrance between Redwood and that entrance. The manual gate will just remain as an option in case we have to get into the retention pond, or currently it's an alfalfa field, so if we need to have equipment in and out of there.
The tractor, or potentially if you had a trailer that got stuck and needed to back out, or had a pile up of vehicles, they could open that gate to get out and then close the gate again. Seldom or on an as-need basis, yeah.
Is there, and I don't know, I don't think that this is in our code, but I guess it would be a suggestion that a sign be placed there, not an entrance?
Certainly.
And that, because I don't think there's enough room for a trailer and pick up and get out, and so
We can do
that's
that,
it.
sure.
And since I'm from horse country, I know that the stables normally, and facilities like this, are an asset to the community. They are usually the best kept. I think sometimes the horses live better than some of our residents. And so, other than making me homesick.
Well, you can come visit anytime. Kentucky?
Tennessee.
See, close.
And so anyway, I think you will be an asset to our community.
We appreciate that. And thank you again for the collaboration.
Chris, did you have something?
I do. I'll preface my comments by putting the new guy hand up, and if I ask a question that everybody else understands, forgive me. But is there any, and I agree with Commissioner Steele that horse barns are usually very good-looking buildings. So is there any way this property could be used dual purpose? My concern around parking is if in the future, if it wanted, I don't know, and I didn't necessarily look at the interior of the building, could it be used? Because I've seen these used in the past for things like reception centers or other ways to augment revenue. And my only concern with parking would be if it's used for something like that in the future, if there's enough parking to provide for that.
I don't believe that they intend to use any of their current area for special events. If they decide to come in later and build those back barns, and if they're not going to be horse stalls, and if they are large areas that could accommodate special events, then we would re-review the parking at that time when they came in to amend the site plan.
So under the current ag zone, can it be used for multiple purposes like that?
That's a really good question.
So they would have to, if they were wanting to change something in the building, if we received a business license application for something else, we would inform them that they need to do a change of use permit, and then
Okay.
we would review parking with that permit.
Perfect. That's all I wanted to find out. Thank you.
Okay. Just, this is an administrative action, so it just means that as long as you dot your i's and cross your t's, then we approve. So I just wanted to ask, are you, is the applicant, will the applicant comply with all the conditions in the city planning report and the engineer's report?
Well, we don't have the conditions set forth yet.
Okay, so that was actually going to be my next.
Right. When it comes back to you for approval, we'll have those
I guess I could
specified.
ask at that time, but I guess you're planning to comply.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so then my next question was, where are all the conditions and everything? It just seemed like it was missing. So I guess that's because we're going to continue.
Correct.
Okay. I was going to ask, I guess one of the questions was about the lighting. I think everything looked good except it was missing a decorative base. So is that something that you were planning to add to your lighting plans?
We actually have we met with the architect yesterday, and we have the fixtures spec'd. They're going to have an enormous, big concrete thing around it because they'll get hit. So it will be, I mean, truly, everything gets hit by those trailers. And so imagine like in a big, nicer, maybe a Park City big parking lot. So it'll be aesthetic, but it'll be something that will hurt the trailer more than it'll hurt the lights, per se.
Okay.
But the whole intent is for it to seem like a very nice facility that you're coming into. it's not industrial. I mean, it'll be an upgrade from what it is today. Our main office right now there is a nice building, but then we just have regular metal outbuildings for the stalls, and the proposed plans are quite an upgrade from those.
And then I have no issue with parking either. I think it's a great compromise, and I do agree that because of the size of your clients,
I like
that it does require some modification probably. But I do have a question about, well, and also that you had the extra space in case, because I was worried about trailers, but you do have the extra space. I wasn't sure what the surface area was based on the planning packet. I was wondering, is it something that will, is there material on it that will blow away in the wind, or how does that, you know, it's not asphalt, so just wondering what that is.
It's asphalt tailings or asphalt millings. So it'll be, it's like the old refuse leftover asphalt. They grind it down, compact it, and put it down.
Okay.
And the heat from the sun binds it, so the oils that are still there will give it it won't be as hard or as firm as asphalt itself, but the binders and the oils are still present, so it will still bind and hold itself stronger than like a typical gravel base or anything else.
Okay, so it's practically impervious to wind at that.
Absolutely,
yeah,
and
okay.
that was a requirement,
And
not
dust.
just for the wind, but with the trailers coming in and out and the horses coming on, they need a firm surface for the horses to be able to walk on as well, so there's other reasons why that was specified. It's a more expensive product, but it's needed for their cases. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
And as I mentioned, one of our partners lives right down the street from there, and we've been there in the wind, so for
Okay.
sure. And we've actually designed the building specifically for how the wind and the sun and the snow and all that sort of stuff will affect our daily business. So.
Okay, terrific. Thank you. That's it for me.
Just a quick question. It's more for staff and maybe Kevin, Mr. Thurman. Because this is administrative and they're asking for less stalls because of the nature of their business, how do we handle that?
That's a good question. I mean, there is a section in the code that talks about variation of parking standards. So that's one way. The other way to look at it is that that the actual size of the building is the lower size, and that's how we're calculating the parking requirement. And I think there's some room there to say that the functional size of the building is this much. So I think there's enough language in the code that we can make it work.
Okay.
I'll come up with some findings.
Very good, thank you.
That was my question as well. Normally, we have a criteria for giving a variance. What is the percentage that they can decrease based upon the code?
Well, as I said, there are kind of two ways to deal with it. One is a 25% decrease, and the other is that by just defining the square footage differently. So I'll see what I can come up with in terms of findings and run those past Kevin.
Because if it doesn't work, I mean, have you entertained the idea of presenting some criteria for a variance that would work for some kind of building like this?
I will talk to Kevin about that, and we'll see the best way to move forward.
Has the fire marshal seen this?
He was sent a copy of the plans, and I have not received, I just checked today, and I have not received any comments back from him.
Okay, I'm just concerned that with the size of the building, the current fire trucks that we have would be able to gain access all the way around all these buildings, because, you know, you always see on the movies the barns burning down. I hate to see the horses get hurt. So.
Yes, absolutely.
Sorry I brought that negativity in here, but
It's reality.
Just one kind of point of training, just as far as the term variation or variance. I prefer not to use those terms. I like to call them permitted exceptions. The reason why is because a variance is a legal procedure in the Utah Code, the Land Use Development and Management Act. It's very strict, and it's very difficult to get a variance. This is an actual permitted exception in the code that's built in. It says if you meet the following factors, an applicant can get a parking reduction.
Thank you.
So just FYI.
All right, any other comments from the planning commission?
Oh, you guys stole mine. You guys stole mine.
Yeah.
Already.
We always do that. We always steal.
Start with Troy next.
Any other comments? Okay, so if we're going to present this as if we're going to continue it, you have to have justification. It was, quote, due to unresolved engineering concerns.
Exactly.
I'll entertain a motion.
The Planning Commission may continue this item. I move to continue the South Valley Equine Center site plan to a future meeting with the direction to the applicant and staff on information, and then you can give me the...
Due to unresolved engineering concerns.
Due to unresolved engineering concerns.
We have a motion from Commissioner Steele. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second from Commissioner Cunningham. Any question on the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. We'll see you soon.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Look forward to it. Okay, let's move on to item number 7. This is a public hearing, site plan for The Point at Saratoga Springs, located at 1186 North Redwood Road. Roma Development LLC and Marlin Hill are the applicants. We'll turn the time over to Sarah Carroll for our presentation.
Okay, this map indicates the location. It was recently rezoned to community commercial. So the two parcels there, wow, this mouse is really moving. This one and this one were both rezoned, and then this little strip along here as well. So the site is zoned community commercial and was reviewed that way in the staff report. Here we go. Okay, so what you're seeing here is 3 buildings that are 4,500 square feet each. And then in the future, we will see a separate site plan application for a medical office here as well, and that'll be at approximately 10,000 square feet. So the parking that's supplied will meet all of the proposed and then the future building as well. And then, let's see. So here's the landscape plan, and that's been reviewed against the code as well. And then we have the dumpster enclosure. What you're seeing here is a single, but they would actually like to do a triple wide dumpster enclosure to meet all of their users, especially because they have a restaurant user in there. And so you'll see here, you'll see a difference on these 2 plans because they rethought that and decided that they would need more than just one for their proposed uses here. So they would like to have 3 dumpsters, and what they would do is increase the size of their dumpster enclosure to meet, to accommodate all 3. And then you're seeing the proposed elevations here. So this is the east elevation, which would be facing the parking lot. And there are 3 buildings. You'll see slight color variations. The form is almost the same, is the same on 2 of the buildings, and then on one of the buildings it won't have a drive-through window, so you'll see a difference on the south elevation. So like I said, this is facing the parking lot here, this is facing Redwood Road here, and then this north elevation on this particular building, this is the building that is closest to 1140 North, which is the access to the Riverbend Townhomes. And so you see more architecture on that particular elevation than the sides of the other buildings. And then the ones with the drive-up window will have, wait, am I saying this correctly? I could do this again. Just a second. Well, maybe I described that wrong. Okay. Hold on, let me go to this one. Okay, no, so this is generally the north, and then, okay, so this is building A, right? Which is the building furthest to the north, and then building B, which is this one, which is the middle building, and then building C. Okay, so this is the one that doesn't have a drive-up window, and on the south elevation you see more windows and more architectural treatment, and that one does face a private right-of-way. And then the photometric plan is shown here, and that does comply with the lighting, the coverage standards. These are the proposed lights, so you see wall packs and sconces that will be full cutoff and pointing downwards, and then these are the proposed parking lot lights with an arm mount. One thing they didn't provide was the decorative base, and so there's a condition in there that they provide the details for the decorative base for the parking lot lights. And then this is the recommended motion for approval, including that they provide details for the decorative base and that the mechanical equipment be screened as required by code once they figure out where exactly that will be located. And in the checklist, it states that they don't have that figured out yet because they'll need to coordinate those locations with the power company.
Okay, thank you for that presentation. Is the applicant here? Would you care to introduce yourself and your name and address and join us?
My name is Brent Vincent. I'm the architect working with Mr. Hill on this project. My address is 401 East, 1700 South, Salt Lake City, Utah. And it's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you. Mr. Vincent, did you want to add anything to the presentation tonight?
No, she did a great job. I brought extra plans because I had all of the elevations labeled wrong directions, and I had a little bit of directional dyslexia when I labeled the plans. And so, yeah, very good. Thank you. So everything looks well.
Well, this is a public hearing, so we're going to open the public hearing tonight for item number 7. This is the site plan for the Point at Saratoga Springs. Okay. We will close public comment, and we'll open it up to the Planning Commission for comment.
The one thing that I have when I'm looking at this, I remember we had a lot of discussion when this came through for the work session about a sidewalk coming from Redwood Road kind of in the middle. And I think I can see it, but yeah.
One right here.
I mean, yes, it comes from Redwood Road and then goes to the parking lot. Is that right? So,
tell us.
We want a walkable community. Is this a walkable community? Kind of a plan. I don't know. I'm having a hard time. But I guess there is sidewalks along the front of the buildings as well, right?
Yes, correct. Quite wide sidewalks.
They are wide. And I don't know, how wide is that other sidewalk coming from? It looks narrow, but it's just the drawing.
It's probably a standard 5-foot sidewalk.
Standard 5 foot. Okay. I do like the layout. I prefer to have buildings up towards the main street instead of a lunar landscape of a parking lot and then buildings the other way. So I really like this. And the sidewalk, I was curious about that. Thanks.
Thank you.
Does the city have adequate primary and secondary water for this applicant, as far as we know? Yes. And is the applicant going to comply with all the conditions in the city planning report and the engineer's report?
Of course. And they've been very good to work with, too, so thank you.
Thanks. That's it for me.
I'm slightly confused by a sidewalk, and it may be the one that Commissioner Cunningham is talking about, but it's the one in the very middle of the page. Looks like it is going east from Redwood. And it seems that it kind of is the median for the ingoing and outgoing drive-through traffic. And then it doesn't really go anywhere. It just kind of goes, so you got cars on both sides and then stops. So could that be explained to me?
There's also access off Redwood Road at the corner, too. And the sidewalk comes around down the private road and ties in on the lower side of that drawing, too. So there's more than one access in from Redwood Road.
And so if that's the case, I'm curious why that middle sidewalk was put in there. Is it, that was a requirement by the city?
Yeah, I think somebody asked for it.
And rightly so. I think there does need to be accessibility. However, I don't know that that sidewalk does much to provide accessibility in a safe way. And so that is a concern of mine. I was puzzled by that sidewalk to nowhere, I guess, straddling, being straddled by cars coming in opposite directions. So I'm assuming that this meets code, the sidewalk there?
Well, it doesn't have to be right there. The only other location that I see that would be better is right here. So it could possibly just be added onto this particular sidewalk and then continue over rather than be in the median, and that could be a suggestion we could make. What they did is they addressed the comment that it was requested that they add a sidewalk from Redwood Road, and it is in our code that that sites have pedestrian access. I mean, that is addressed in other ways. This just goes, this kind of secures all levels of pedestrian access by having one in the middle of the site, and it is beneficial for those walking on Redwood Road and things like that. However, it might function better if it's added on at this particular location and it's not near the drive-throughs, and that could be a recommendation you could make.
I think that's probably a good suggestion. And then the only other question I had is are there crosswalks that are going to be put on the drive-throughs between the buildings? So drivers will know that there's, I couldn't quite see because of it doesn't look like it to me.
I would think that ADA would mandate that we stripe across those, just for ADA access across the site. And I can talk to the engineers on that, but
okay.
ADA would mandate that anywhere where a wheelchair is going to run has to be striped.
If that's the case, then I think that's fantastic, but I do think that sidewalk would be
I like it down lower too.
it.
I think it would be a good, I'd just run it down lower in that landscaping too, so I'll talk to the engineers. That's what happens when the architect doesn't do it.
Could we have some more creativity than just straight? I don't know.
So I have a question for you. Normally I wait to the very end, but I just couldn't wait. So sorry. But anybody here been to McDonald's on a Saturday morning? Okay, so the drive-through backs up through the parking lot, and then you can't park, and if you're parked, you can't get out. And so this is kind of creating something like that. So if you have, let's say that I hope that you have very popular drive-throughs, people want to use them a lot, they're going to back up along through this parking lot, and then people won't be able to get out. So, I mean, that's basically where you're going to have your line, right? Right in between the parking lot. So if I am a parked customer and I want to get out, but all this is lined up with cars, how are we going to do that? I mean,
in my experience, these are huge drive-ups. They wrap all the way around the building. Probably enough room that if I pulled up and saw cars wrapped around that building, I'd go find a parking place and walk in. You can probably get 15 cars around that building, and 15 cars are waiting. I do it, but so in my view, that this is just a huge amount of stacking for a drive-up facility on a small building like this.
I don't know that we had 15 cars stacked up with McDonald's there, right? It's more like a third of the building. So if you had that kind of stack, yeah, he's got a good point. Okay, anybody else have comments?
Yeah, we're very, you're right. What you're hitting on there is something that I just, and particularly Mr. Hill has a really big issue with, is getting enough stacking for a drive-up window that we don't start creating traffic problems in the parking lot.
Right, like, I mean, right over here, you got Little Caesars, blocks the whole thing, right? Okay.
So I actually wanted to make a comment based on that sidewalk issue in that middle there. When I saw it, I thought it was a great idea, and the reason why is every Thursday I go and get my Walk Cafe and my coffee creations right back here, and there is no sidewalk there. So I am in the middle of drive window traffic. And I've always thought, why didn't someone put some kind of a path? Now that one is not 3 different buildings. It's all one building with multiple stores. So I have to choose one end or the other. So, but I would rather go in between buildings just to get to my store that I want to get to sooner or faster. And so a sidewalk actually gives me a safe place to walk, as opposed to what I'm doing today, which is walking right through the drive-through traffic. So that was my perspective, and that's why I didn't think it was a problem, but.
I'm going to lend you my 6 children. Let's see you make it through there.
They probably wouldn't go to Copy Creations.
You're an empty nester, right?
No.
Your kids are
No.
gone, I mean.
No, but anyway, that was my perspective.
Yeah, so there's plus and minuses. We'll do whatever you guys want. To us, that's totally changeable.
I like the one just to the south of, well, it looks like it's, yeah, it looks like the one to the south would be safer. I'd rather go up against the wall of a building than be in between 2 cars.
Yeah, where you've got no drive up, and that's kind of that is, I think, slated to be a dental office, so it's got a little lighter usage, and so, you know.
That'd be safer.
So there's a sidewalk to the north of the property, right? On the north side?
There is, right, there's a sidewalk here, you can see it
So,
here on the north.
so we've got a sidewalk to the north and the south. Does the code require that 3rd sidewalk at all?
It does require safe pedestrian connections between buildings within the development and any street adjacent to the property. So, I mean, that can be...
Anywhere between buildings?
Right.
Okay. So, yeah, I really don't like the location of that sidewalk, because I know I could see my kids walking down that sidewalk and jumping into both lanes of traffic. That's what kids do. And I think that's very unsafe.
Commissioner Carter, I think we're also concerned about Chair Wilkins doing the same thing.
Same thing, yeah.
You know.
Well, I don't know him very well yet, so.
So the experience of my kids is, if there isn't a sidewalk, they'll walk there anyway.
That very well could be. Now, if there's no sidewalk there, but you landscape it with bushes that they can't walk down.
Would you landscape that if there wasn't a sidewalk there?
Yes, it would be landscaped.
And it would create a natural barrier between the 2 drive-throughs.
I always thought what we should do is build buildings and then wait till the paths develop and then pave them.
So during this
Pronghorn antelope.
During the staff presentation, I had a question come up. With the 3 dumpsters, is there enough room with the curbing and the entrance there to access those 3 dumpsters for dumping?
Oh, yeah, there'll be plenty.
I'm not a dump truck expert. However, we have a similar situation in our own parking lot.
Okay.
So based on that, I would say yes. However,
Right. That far east one,
I'm not
the far east dumpsters from the picture is across from the curbing, and I just, can the truck make that swing and get it appropriately is a concern. And then my last question, there's ample parking for these 3 buildings, and then you've got another large building coming in. Does the city require additional space for snow push, or can that go into their existing parking?
We don't address it in the code.
Okay, that's all I have, thanks.
Typically, it just eats up a parking stall.
Any other comments? Oh, I guess we do. I got the look.
Okay, I have a question about, the last time this was presented to us, there was not enough landscaping on the east side, and so now we have 10 feet, I think. It is not dimensioned, and so I can't tell for sure, but I think so. And you were probably, the way it looked, you were probably pretty close on your dimensions. So where did the extra footage come from? I know you could move the parking down and everything till you got to the buildings, or to the access aisle in front of the buildings. What changed?
So,
We added some land onto that, didn't we? The
right.
lot.
The
upper side.
city is,
Oh, okay.
so they had a hard time meeting their front setback before, however, because, and this property right here is currently owned by the city. However, in exchange for long-term maintenance, the city would like to do a land trade and give the property owner that. So that gives them more flexibility with their front setback. And so I did ask that same question to the engineer, and they were able to move that, to make this wider here. They moved the entire site closer to Redwood Road, and they no longer had to worry about whether or not they could meet the setback because of the property exchange that's going to happen here.
Okay, that explains it very well. Thank you. I'm a little concerned about some of the architecture. That we require as much detail on the backside or on the both sides, especially the dental building, and that one does have it, except you've got doors that don't go anywhere. And it would be nice if a sidewalk could be placed there by those 3 doors adjacent to them.
On the back, you mean on the Redwood side?
Right, because we're trying to be, eventually, we're going to have bus service and people walking, and it would be nice if a business comes in and can use that door, then there's a sidewalk there. And also, that could connect with the sidewalk that we were talking about that we prefer would be placed perpendicular, and then you could, it would connect, and it would make sense.
You're talking about the southernmost building, then I'm thinking, because the other ones have drive-ups on them. So
Right.
Yeah, I don't know why we couldn't put a sidewalk back there. I mean,
And
again,
that way, people could come down, and we need to keep in mind that sidewalk is going to need, any of those sidewalks are going to need to be ADA accessible. I think.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, we don't do anything that isn't.
And let's see.
So, Commissioner, so that's just a suggestion, right? Because we can't condition that, I don't think.
I don't think so. Well, I don't know. It depends on, how do I want to put this? It depends on the building code and what goes in and how exiting works.
Yeah.
And we don't know that right now. So it could be that it would need to be, but we don't know that. So we can suggest it, and I think our architect probably.
Generally, in my practice, I try to make everything ADA accessible because I don't want to be involved in a lawsuit. So, and there's a lot of those going on, you know. And so, yeah, generally, any exit door has to be ADA accessible and has to be able to tie into a public way by ADA compliance. And so, it's really not a problem on this flat of a site.
Okay, good.
Where we run into problems is when we're up on the hill somewhere, and then we get nightmares.
Well, and you be very creative.
Yes, we do.
I have a question based on that. In this particular case where it's not shown with sidewalks to those doors, so when does a door not have to have an accessible approach and be tied to the public way? Because are these, sorry, let me go to the elevations. Are they emergency exits, and so they don't have to because the main entrance does? When does it not have to?
It would depend. If they're being used as an emergency exit, they would have to have a tie to the public way. These buildings are small enough that chances are those rear doors will not be used as emergency, will not need to be used as an emergency exit, at least not all of them.
Okay, so even if it's an emergency exit, it has to?
If it's an emergency exit, they'll have to tie somehow into some public way so that they can get away from the building.
Rather than just a little 5-foot pad.
Yeah, stoop, yeah.
I agree with you. So I'm trying to think ahead a little bit, and we don't know in 10 years if there'll be a dental office there or if there'll be a dress store there. And if you have a sidewalk, then it makes it really usable. And then it also helps with the exiting, if that is required. And it depends on the square footage, and I don't need to tell the architect, he knows, but there's a lot that goes into it. So Anyway.
But again, I'm confused what we're requiring of the applicant again, because
Okay.
I understand the ADA part, but it sounds like we may be requiring a sidewalk just in case, and I don't know if that's something that we can actually do.
Well, our code kind of covers this a little bit. Let me read it to you.
No, I don't think we would balk at putting a sidewalk wherever you want a sidewalk.
You need pedestrian access from the street to all the buildings. And so this would be one that I guess I can say I would highly suggest that you put one there.
Right, and that's what I'm saying is right now, it actually meets code. So how do we make a motion then, including your suggestions, since we can't really condition it? The applicant already meets code.
We ask nicely.
No, but again, how do you make that motion? Is it a condition that we ask
It's a
nicely?
suggestion.
Okay, that's what I was asking.
Okay, and probably within our code, I could make some arguments, but I won't try since we have someone who understands what I'm talking about. The garbage surround is I have some real heartburn over that for several reasons. I don't think you can get to that easternmost one with a truck that picks up from the front. Now, it looks like it's going to be pretty tight. I've seen some of these trucks, and it's going to cause somebody some maneuvering.
Well, at times, and I've had this on several tight sites, the driver actually has to get out of the truck, and they roll the dumpster out and then dump it and roll it back in, and that's not uncommon, and the owner pays for that service.
Okay. Then the other thing that I am concerned about is you have two high garbage producers in your drive-through restaurants. And almost every time I go to a fast food, there is somebody taking garbage out to the garbage surrounds. I don't know how to say this, but it seems that that is going to be a long trek for everybody. Plus, it would be a long ways for the future tenant, and you couldn't get those garbage containers any further from the southernmost building if you tried.
My suspicion is the new development will also have its own dumpster where it's a medical facility. I suspect they'll want their own dumpster.
Okay, I have some questions. What is the box area at the entrance, the southern entrance, right there?
That's a future access to future parking for the future building. That'll be a drive that'll head that direction, and then we'll develop the new building down in that corner. I've already started laying out the site for it. There'll be a new building with a little bit more parking because we'll want to increase our parking a little bit, and that drive goes into that building and then loops up and ties into the parking lot on the other side.
So your building will actually face to the west?
We haven't decided which way it'll face. Yeah, it'll probably face west.
Okay, but in the previous submittals, it's been facing north, and so that does make sense. Okay, now there is another small box in the area that's going to be future, right there. And what that is, if you don't know about it,
The engineer does.
It looks like a bunker.
Oh, really?
It's a concrete structure, and it has a doorway or an opening that goes in under it. And I'm just wondering, number one, how...
Oh.
I think it's
nice.
a well house.
Is it a well house?
I believe so. I walked that several months ago, maybe more than a year, when this came through the first time.
What did you say it was?
well house, I think it's.
Okay, an old well house, huh? Okay, could be.
Will that need to be, will it need to be demolished? Will it need to be closed off? Is there any danger to the kids playing around it?
I can't remember its condition. In terms of the well, they're not using it. That would have to be abandoned in place according to state standards.
Okay.
And I can't remember that structure seemed a little bit curious. It, small structure with a doorway. Yeah, it could be a bit of a attractive nuisance.
Mm-hmm. That's what I'm afraid of. Anyway, I guess as the architect, you should be aware that that's there and talk to the engineer about it.
Well, the engineer knows it's there. He'll take care of it.
Let's see. Oh, this is maybe a question for Gordon. Since the Jordan River Park, or Jordan River Boulevard continues through the parking lot, the way it looks, and out onto Redwood Road, the lighting, or the light pole on the north side of the property, would that need to be a street, like a public street light, or will that be a parking lot light?
So both of those are commercial accesses into private property. So the notion that the road from the east is a continuation connection to Redwood Road, I believe is not accurate.
Okay.
That's why we're, and you know, it used to be. I know why you're saying that, but the way this site's being configured now and the way we're reconfiguring that east entrance is, that will be just a commercial driveway approach. And sidewalk will be carried around, carried through the approach, and it won't have a semblance of a street.
Okay, so it won't be, the boulevard will dead end there, even though it doesn't.
It's a 90-degree turn. It'll be just changed into a 90-degree turn with a commercial driveway
Okay.
approach on it.
Okay. I think that that's probably all of the comments that I have.
Okay. Any others? Good? Okay, I'll entertain a motion.
May I? All right.
There we
Move
go.
to forward a positive recommendation to the city council for the Point at Saratoga Springs site plan located at approximately 1186 North Redwood Road as shown in the exhibits with the findings and conditions in the staff report dated today.
We have a motion from Christopher Karn. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second from Ken Kilgore. Any questions on the motion?
Yes. We put in as a suggestion that the applicant put a sidewalk in front, or it's in front of on the Redwood Road side of Building C.
Kevin, can we do that?
It's your
Yeah, you bet.
motion.
That's up to you. And
It's your
also
motion.
the
Okay.
person that seconded
I
it.
just want to make sure we're okay putting a suggestion into a motion that's not code required.
Well, so here's the thing. This is under 191603, subsection 1B. It says, safe pedestrian connection shall be made between buildings within a development, to any streets adjacent to the property, to any pedestrian facilities that connect the property, when feasible between developments, and from buildings to the public sidewalk to minimize the need to walk within the parking lot among cars. So right then and there, you got, it's safe, it has to be a safe pedestrian connection. It also needs to minimize the need to walk within the parking lot among cars. So I think it's within your purview to make that a condition, not just a suggestion. If you make a finding that it's not safe, that introducing the pedestrian traffic along that or basically in the middle of the road could lead to, you know, children, whatever your safety concerns are, just articulate that.
Okay.
I have a question then, because then it doesn't specify the number or that every building has to have that kind of a, so if the applicant has already done that with a couple buildings, we then condition that they're required to do it for all buildings?
Well, it does say, actually, that it says shall be made between buildings. So, I mean, I would interpret that as between each building. And
But it also
sounds like it's not, I mean, it's not contested. The applicant said that he'd be willing to do it.
It also says that they should be safe.
No, right.
Sure. And that's why I'm suggesting instead of the entrance, you can make that finding that that's not a safe pedestrian connection, that you could move that to the south like suggested.
Well, Kevin, the spot we're talking about is right here on the back of the building, so taking the sidewalk and extending it the length of the building.
It doesn't go through a parking lot or anything like that.
But also what Kevin's talking about,
So if we're,
Second
if we
suggestion.
add it, I think we should be very clear about where.
Well, and that then makes, if that sidewalk on the north side of Building C goes to Redwood Road, then that would connect Redwood Road with that building.
Yeah, so we could extend this and then also extend it.
Right, and then it,
So there's two different things I'm trying to struggle with, or I'm trying to figure out here. So one is to make that one sidewalk that's there better, and by moving it and making it more sensible, as was suggested by some of the planning commissioners. The other is whether we require all buildings that have, whether we require sidewalks for all, in between all buildings. And when I ask, there's no numbers suggested, or it doesn't say every building. If we make it that now, then we have to do that in the future for all applicants, otherwise it's not fair. So
Not necessarily.
Well, why not?
I think it's based upon safety. In this instance, between the northernmost and middle building, that's not really safe.
No, that's the one issue. The other issue is what Commissioner Steele brought up, where she wants the
Building
sidewalk
C?
there with those.
Right.
Yeah, so those are two different issues.
That is.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
why.
this is a difficult requirement because it could be interpreted different ways. I mean, it says safe pedestrian connections shall be made between buildings within a development. You could interpret that it's just a sidewalk connecting all the buildings together. You could interpret it this way, where it has to be in between the buildings. There's multiple ways of interpreting that. So I think the direction you're going with the things that we've suggested in the meeting, I think that's a good path to take, unless you agree with Commissioner Kilgore that better to have it there than not have it, just because then people can walk there. But that's going to be up to the Planning Commission to make that recommendation. But I think it can be a condition rather than just a suggestion based on the criteria in the code.
My understanding is Commissioner Steele's request is not about safety, it's about convenience.
it is about safety too.
Well,
And it's part of the code. As I said, I could argue the code. I was just going to try to be, I didn't want to debate the code here tonight.
yeah, and I have an issue in that we didn't require all applicants in the past to have sidewalks in the backs of their buildings.
That's not the back of the building. We have a requirement that, that buildings face and the street, the main street, and that's to provide for a walkable community. And if you don't provide something for people to walk on, they're going to make that path anyway. And so, and there are doors there that look like that they could be used, and I think it's probably a no-brainer. And if you get into the ADA code, then you get some other issues coming up that would require it. So it can go in as a condition, it can go in as a suggestion.
Commissioner Steele, there's doors on the west side of that building, correct?
Right.
So you would have to have a sidewalk for ADA accessibility to those doors.
If they're required exit.
Yeah,
If they're required exit, and we don't know that yet.
But I don't want to force every applicant to consider every door as an ADA exit.
Well, 60% of required exits must be considered they have to be required exits. If they're required exits, you got to get them out and you got to get them away from the building.
Okay, I believe
And if that
everybody's...
building, if somebody took the whole building, then it might need those, and it would need a sidewalk.
So let me bring it back together, give a little synopsis. We still have a motion on the table.
Yeah, I'll amend my motion if I can.
And the question, the two things that have been suggested are that we move the sidewalk between the northern and middle building to the middle, between the middle and the southernmost building. Second was that we add a sidewalk towards the west side of the third building, which is on the south building.
Correct.
Are you?
I'll amend my motion. I do. Well, I have a question.
Sure.
Your comment on 60%, and I don't have the number of doors in front of me here, but with 3 doors, there's 3 doors on that side of the building, correct? No, I don't want to get into particulars.
Oh, yeah, they have, our architect probably can explain this better, but you take a point and you diagonal it, and you have to be halfway.
You're getting it.
And so if somebody took the whole building, you couldn't consider those 3 doors probably as exits. Or you could consider one of them, but the other 2 probably would be too close, and without having a floor plan and having all the measurements, you don't know. I would suspect if somebody took the whole building, they'd probably need at least one of those back doors.
It'll probably be driven more by the number of occupants in the space than by distance. If you get a restaurant and you get over so many people in the restaurant, it has to have a second exit. And that'll be driven by when we develop the interiors of these buildings, there may have to have some sidewalks added as they develop, or maybe not, depending on how they lay it out.
Okay, so does this motion work?
Mr. Kern, the time is yours.
Yes, so I'll amend my motion to include moving the sidewalk from between the north and central building to between the central and south building, and requiring a sidewalk on the west side of the south building to be compliant, ADA compliant.
We have an amended motion. Do we have our second?
That way they can put in to the first door, the second door, the third door, as long as it's compliant.
Okay, so we're saying that we're going to do this with every applicant then from now on. That if they have a door, then they could possibly use it as an exit. Therefore, we're going to require it to be ADA compliant.
It will depend on whether it's required or not.
Well, this isn't required.
Well, it could be.
Okay, so that's where I have the issue.
Okay.
I mean,
Every site plan is different, you know,
understand,
and they
but-
all have different ways of getting in and out of places. So just because it works for this site doesn't mean it necessarily would be necessary for another site, depending on their access
I understand, but if we're saying that it could be, then we can apply that to every application.
Kevin, do you see that as an issue?
How do we decide objectively?
Well, Nora is absolutely right that each site plan application is going to be different, and then you just have to apply the existing code to the facts and the situation at hand. How you do that is within your discretion under the substantial evidence standard. That means you're under the the substantial evidence standard. As long as you have substantial evidence on the record, some factual, credible, and substantial evidence is defined as some factual, credible support for your decision, or it's not going to overturn that.
So
in other words, it's not. Sometimes you think, well, this has to be a slam dunk one way or the other. That's not, or it has to be more evidence and support. That's not the case at all under the substantial evidence standard. Substantial evidence standard is just some factual, credible support. That makes sense.
Yeah.
The applicant could be in here saying, hey, I want to do this, and could have, not in this case, but in other cases, they could do an hour-long presentation and just be absolutely convinced if you're a jury, but you as a planning commission can make the complete opposite decision if you've got some factual, credible support your decision. That's important to keep in mind. So you don't have to, in other words, you're not really setting a precedent in these types of cases because every application is different. Your analysis of the code is going to be different based on the circumstances. And as long as you have some evidence supporting your decision, you'll be fine.
Okay, so my concern is setting precedent. So if you feel that we're not setting precedent, even though this is a could be and I don't find that factual, then I will be okay with the motion.
Our second agrees with the amendment to the motion. Any other questions on the motion?
Can I just say something?
Sure.
We expect what Commissioner Steele is saying. If you look at all these buildings, they have a sidewalk on the north side that turns the corner and comes to the first door. The reason that's there is if the second door needs to have an ADA exit, that sidewalk is continued on to the second or the third or the fourth door. So each one of these buildings has already thought about carrying it all the way down to all the doors if needed. And so it's there. You're on the right track. It's there, and you're not doing anything we didn't, or not shocked at. We're not shocked.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you for the education.
Thank you.
That was fun.
We're going to take a 5-minute break.
Was he really? What? That's wild.
The architect, we were companions in the
Wow. That was a while ago. A year or two. Have you stayed in touch or?